And once more, welcome everyone. Today is August 5th, and I'm very happy to be with you. I'm Sandra. I'm the Director of Community and Patient Education at Montefiore Nyack Hospital. And today we're going to be talking about emotional eating. Lots of people, especially in the United States, struggle with obesity, pre-diabetes, and other diseases related to food and nutrition. So today we have a very inspiring session, and we're also accompanied by one of my favorite dietitians, Diana Alberti, and she's going to be sharing, different ways on how people can lose weight without, the regular dieting that everybody hates so much. And then again, we're going to be talking about how Mary, Catherine, Susan they have been amazing at losing weight and how they've been doing it. And that's why, this is going to be so inspirational for a lot of us. So let's start with you, Diana. Do you want to please introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you, Sandra. Yes, my name is Diana Alberti. I'm a registered dietitian and eating psychology coach, a yoga instructor, and a women's circle facilitator. As you can see, I'm a multi-passionate professional that loves to really get to the root of a lot of our health problems, or especially in relationship to food, body, and our ability to express our full self. So yeah, I help women to live confidently in their own skin, feel empowered, to be who they truly are, and to take care of their whole self from a place of sovereignty without letting food or body challenges get in the way of their highest self, and actually share their gifts to the world.
Wow, that sounds amazing. So and also complicated at the same time. So do you want to flesh that out a little bit, like maybe with an example or something that we can understand how people are actually able to achieve their weight loss through this process?
Yeah. So I mean, like you were saying before, right? So we've all been so conditioned with dieting strategies and dieting messages out there, as far as the only way to lose weight, that you have to be in a diet, right? So I help women to reach their goals, their highest goals, through strategies that nourish, instead of the typical strategies from dieting culture that is punishing, right? I help women get to know themselves better, so they really know what is it that they truly need and want and desire, right? That comes from that place of whole self. Instead of those dieting strategies that consume our life, punish, restrict, and not let us be who we really are, right? So it's a different approach. It's a positive approach, empowering approach, uplifting, that it goes far beyond the nutritional, classical nutrition, by focusing on more of the connection between the mind, the body, and I like to bring even soul into this. It's bringing soul back into nutrition.
Mm-hmm. And you just said something very interesting, is you help women get to know themselves. So how does that play a role with dieting? Because, a lot of us will think, well, that's psychology, that has nothing to do with nutrition. One thing is what goes in my mind, and another thing is what goes in my mouth. So how do those two relate?
Yeah, and especially in the conversation that we're having today in relationship to emotional eating, I think that is a key factor in actually really helping to untangle the emotional eating, is actually getting to know ourselves. Because what I do believe that is at the root of emotional eating is we as women particularly, and as humans actually, we haven't been taught to how to healthily connect with our emotions, to actually express our emotions in a healthy way, and to, from there, once we know ourselves a little bit better, once we are in a healthier relationship with our own emotions and allowing them to be there without judgment and criticism and trying to suppress them, which that's what typically does. What we do when we emotionally eat is eat to suppress an emotion so we don't feel the emotion. So the idea is that we become in a healthier relationship with emotions, and we expand our range of emotions, and by which that helps us to get to know ourselves better, what triggers us, what makes us feel this way and what makes us feel that way. And also empowering us to, that's another layer that we haven't been taught to, like how to express our needs. Like we've, as women, have been taught to sacrifice. And so when we sacrifice, we're not really saying what we need. We're not really saying what we desire. We're not able to express those things in a healthy way. And so a lot of times we sacrifice, so then we move into just suppressing those emotions, desires through food. Right? So if we don't know ourselves, it's very hard to make these changes so that it could be sustainable for the rest of our lives. Otherwise, it becomes just like a little Band-Aid on top of another Band-Aid.
Mm-hmm. And how do you know when you're eating more to suppress emotions than hunger?
Yeah, so that's another key factor, right? So another thing that with dieting culture, what has happened is that we have been inundated with messages out there of fight your hunger, fight the appetite, suppress the hunger. So we don't even know what physical hunger actually feels like in our bodies. So how can we really tell the difference between emotional hunger and physical hunger when we don't even know what physical hunger feels like, right? So that's the first part, getting to know our bodies. And if we're constantly also in a food fight against food, and as if food is as the enemy, so then it's like hard to provide our body with what it needs nutritionally. Once our body is fed with what we need nutritionally, then we can say, oh, and then allow ourselves to know our hunger and get to know our fullness. Then we can know that, oh, I am full right now, but I still want something. That might be a little trigger to say, well, this might be emotion hunger, right? It's basically when you've already eaten, there is not that hunger, but you still want to eat something. That could be one of the kind of flags to say that this is emotional eating.
Now, just to be a little punctual, I think there is a fine line also between learning, hunger and satisfaction. Because, just to give you an example, last night I had my dinner and I was like, I still need a little something. You're right. It's not that I'm still hungry, but maybe I am a little bit. Like, how do I make that difference between still being a little bit hungry, as in I need food and energy and nutrition, as you said before also, or not just overeating and I don't need anymore? Like, if you were gonna give our attendees a tip on how to differentiate between that, what would it be?
Well, first, before I get to the tip, and I think you brought up a very good point that I love to talk about, is the satisfaction factor, which is one of the principles of the intuitive eating, right? So a lot of the times it could be that we are eating enough nutritionally to support ourselves for sure, right? But then there is that part of the satisfaction factor. Are we adding pleasure with food? And that's so interesting. Like in the Japanese culture, pleasure is one of the main goals, health goals, which is very interesting, as opposed to in our culture, it's very separated from pleasure. Pleasure is non-existent and suppressed as well.
Or even bad, I will say.
Bad, yes. Yeah, yeah.
Pleasure is bad.
Yes, and especially with the dieting kind of culture, also has been said, if you enjoy food, then it's bad. So there's also that layer in there of like, if you enjoy food, then it's bad. And part of that, what we hear is like, there's also that pleasure of enjoying food. So making sure that that is part of your thing. And so it's very hard to kind of disconnect from that, because we're so brainwashed into the dieting mentality of like, if you enjoy food, it's bad. Enjoy food is not healthy. If you enjoy food,
yeah,
you're gonna overdo it.
Like if you eat all the vegetables that you hate, you're doing well. But if you eat all the chocolate that you love, you're doing bad.
Right, right. And so the other part is like, okay, then being present with the meal, because that's another way that you get satisfaction, right? A lot of the times in our constant life, we are multitasking and doing a bunch of things and not giving eating time enough time to really get that satisfaction as well. So if we're not getting that mental satisfaction as well, then your mind's also going to wonder, okay, I want something else, or it feels like you haven't had anything or you haven't had any food, and so you're still seeking for food.
Mm-hmm. And here is another question for you. And at this point, I also would like to remind our attendees that we have a Q&A and a chat box. So if you would like to ask any questions about this topic, please start writing your questions and I'll be very happy to share them with our experts. So Diana, we're talking about emotions as well, and we definitely need to somehow liberate our emotions. And I do understand that, you know, for example, we are in a society that you're always saying like, oh, I need a drink, for example, right? Things like that. Like we're used to, instead of de-stressing with something else, we're looking for something that is going to be food related. So if we don't turn to food, how we manage our emotions in a healthy way, you know, because obviously we can turn to other stuff that is even worse than food.
Yeah, yeah. I think for that layer is very important to get support. Very important to, it's almost like trying to, yeah, it's like, it's trying to be with an emotion that you're not feel comfortable with, you don't feel safe. It might be a safety, it might be trauma related, it may be, so there's a lot of layers into emotional, and to be able to do it in a safe way that feels safe, that feels supported. And that is, I think, it's key in getting to know yourself, right? So some emotions are deeply charged and deeply suppressed, right? That it's hard to bring it up little by little that it feels good and safe. So there could be a lot of layers in there that we need to work it through, take a look at, and especially if we don't want to look at it, because it's for a good reason that a lot of the times we don't want to look at those at those emotions, and a lot of the times is because it doesn't feel safe. Or it hasn't been safe for in past generations, and and it's been shown too, that we carry ancestral trauma within ourselves. So if in our as women, then we weren't able to express emotions, or it was dangerous to express emotions or to share our thoughts and beliefs. It's hard. So there is that layer of collective or ancestral trauma, which I also have been diving into, that also influence that. And that's part of the reasons why I started to hold women's circles, to have and that's why there's a lot of other ways of getting support, because I really do think in our women's circle, for example, it's as long as you have a safe container that you're being held, that you're being seen in the emotions that you are, depending on the range, and you being witnessed and heard and listened to without judgment and just letting you be as you are, that's huge healing, in our emotional range of being in those emotions. So it is, we think that it's a quick fix, you know, that's what we've done with food, a quick fix of any of the emotions, to do it with food. And the reason why we don't deal with it head on is because it may be very painful, hard, and we don't want to go into a lot of the hard inner work that needs to be done so that we can continue to have that healthy relationship with our emotions, with food, with body, all of that.
Is this, well, it is a hard job, but also is this something that you can do with a registered dietitian, or is this something that you need to do with a psychologist, or is this something that you can just join a support group to do? Like, what will be, you know, some of the ways to get to do this work?
Yeah, it really depends on the level of the emotional need, right? If there's trauma involved, I would say, you know, there's levels that nutritionists or dietitians can work with, especially also it depends on their training, right? Some dietitians don't have any psychology background or any of those strategies to help. So it really depends on the patient and really depends on the professional. But if it's a higher level of need and trauma, like I would definitely recommend seeing a therapist or a more structure support group if the needs feel higher, right?
Are there any tips that you can share with us on how to recognize when we are emotional eaters, or we need to look for this type of help? Like, what will be some of the symptoms, let's say, or signs that we can start thinking about and be like, okay, check. Yes, I need help.
Well, I think a lot of the times we're able to recognize it, right? Because we go through the cycle of, okay, I'm never going to have this food again. It's out of my thought, you know, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden you find yourself buying that food, eating that food, sometimes very unconsciously, sometimes, and you don't even notice until you're eating that food or after you've eaten that food that you've had it. And then you feel really, really, really bad about it, feel guilty and even a level of shame. And a level of shame that it feels like you've done something severely wrong. And also then the other one is just, you know, you feeling full, but you still feel like you need to eat more, and you definitely know that you've passed your fullness levels, right? So, and typically we go for comfort foods, and rather than healthy foods, we never emotionally eat on carrots,
No.
right?
Or broccoli. No.
Or broccoli or salad. So it's always going to be the typical sort of like, you know, comfort food, sweets, carbs, etc. Yeah.
Now, it is very recognized, or at least we're told, that diet and exercise need to go together. Like, if you just diet and don't exercise, you don't lose weight. If you just exercise and don't diet, you don't lose weight. I know you're a yoga instructor as well. So tell us a little bit about that relationship and how actually exercise or sports or a physical activity can help you with your brain health as well and your mental health.
So I come from the idea of the most important thing for me in working with my patients is creating that healthy relationship with food and body and even exercise, right? So because of our conditioning, diet and conditioning, we have a very sometimes unhealthy relationship with food and very unhealthy relationship with exercise, because we've been told to like do, and the more that you do and the more calories you burn and the heavier exercise and HIIT exercise, you know, it's going to be best. And the truth is not always the case for a lot of people. And what I help women to do is like really reconnect with themselves to see, okay, first of all, what is their relationship to exercise, and see if there's a lot of wounding around exercise. Perhaps the person didn't have a great experience in phys ed during high school. Perhaps they were bullied, or perhaps they were pushed to the limits that they weren't, you know, that their body was not meant to be. And so I actually work with women on building that healthier relationship with exercise, because it could be an excellent outlet, even for emotional kind of like release, but it has to be done in a way that, again, because of our dieting conditioning, we're going to push ourselves way past our limits because we think with no pain, no gain. And, you know, there is a paradox there, right? So yes, we're capable of doing more, and our body is so capable of doing a lot of things, but we also need to honor and respect it where it is now. So I work with a lot of that, because they don't even, for example, even in a yoga class, they might want to do exactly what the instructor is doing. And meanwhile, if, for example, in a yoga class, there's always an invitation. It's never a push to do something. And there's always that reminder of like listening to your body, to where you're at right now. And it may be different from yesterday and to today. And to actually honor where your body is at, and like maybe not do the high level 1 pose because that's what you're supposed to do. So it's stripping away the shoulds from exercise and dieting and food, and moving more into, okay, what feels good, what is good for yourself, and rather than mainstream.
Okay, I like that last part that you said, move away from the shoulds. So could we kind of conclude here that you should move away from the shoulds and move more towards the coulds?
Yeah, I would say there's an invitation instead of like we should, right? An invitation to move away from the shoulds and perhaps get curious about the coulds. Like, what could you do?
Yeah.
Get curious about it, right? A lot of the times, and that's the thing that I also help women to do, is like get connected with themselves, because again, everything is the messages from outside in rather than from the inside out. And so from inside, it's like, okay, what could feel better? And really tuning in with your body. What could feel good for me this morning or this afternoon? What could feel good? And that's the other key that I also bring in, which is huge. And especially as women, I don't know how many women or men are in here, but I work with a lot of women. So as women, the other thing that also gets in the way of perhaps this linear thinking that dieting mentality has brought to us is that we are cyclical beings and that we have cycles as women. And that's another conversation that we never have and that we never acknowledge. And that does have an impact in our nutrition, that does have an impact on the calorie burning, that also has an impact. Sleep, yeah. And that also has an impact even in our exercise levels of energy. Hormonally, physiologically, our hormones are going to be in different levels. So yeah, there's going to be a phases of your cycle that you're going to be super energetic and you can do the HIIT class and you can go for a run and you can do all these things. And then it's going to come a point that your hormones kind of go down and you need more rest. And we haven't learned to honor the cycles at all.
Listen, you just made me feel better. There are some times that I want to take the stairs and sometimes that I don't. So now I'll be like, okay, today's just my cycle.
Beautiful. Yes.
I'm going to start honoring my cycle. Thank you so much, Diana. This is very helpful. And again, you made me feel better. So
yay.
Susan, let's move on to you. And I know that you have an amazing story to share, and you've done a lot of work, and you've also helped a lot of women and other people in general to achieve their health goals. So tell us a little bit about you and this journey.
Thank you, Sandra. First of all, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Audio is good? Okay. So yeah, it's so wonderful hearing Diana, because it really made me know there's different kinds of people in the world. And I think the goal, is to find the approach that is really the right fit for you. Because I was thinking as you were talking, Diana, that, like there are people who probably can do diets. I have met people in my life for whom dieting has worked. Interestingly, the one person I'm thinking of is not a woman. So maybe it is cycles conversation, but and then there are people for whom, workshops and circles and support and intuitive eating and looking at things and exploring can be the very right fit to bring you, to healing, inward healing, body healing, healthy lifestyle. And then there's people like me. And I'm here from a program called Food Addicts in Recovery, which is a 12-step program that's basically for foodaholics. FA was modeled after Alcoholics Anonymous, AA, and the program started a few decades ago, and we have maybe 10,000 people around the world that are doing this program. It's a free program. And FA is for people like me, who tried the diets and failed to the point where I was obese. I came into FA when I was 20, spent my entire adolescence in an obese body. I'm 5'3", I was 200 pounds, and really self-destructive, suicidal, always walking around with a big smile on my face because God forbid I should be fat and depressed, then no one would ever want to spend time with me. So I was lying all the time about my feelings. And I certainly was an emotional eater. That is absolutely part of my repertoire. But I tried many things, including diets, including a lot of holistic approaches like Diana offers. And because I'm the kind of person that I am, I failed at those, and I got bigger and bigger and bigger over the years. So for me, I needed a program that addressed food addiction, which is very different. And not everybody who has a weight problem is a food addict. I just know I am, because when I take one cookie, I have to eat the box. Maybe I won't eat it in front of you, but I guarantee you, I will eat that box. Some food addicts eat a little bit all day long, but they're constantly medicating themselves. And that's the difference. Food addicts use food as a drug, and especially sugar and flour. So I tried with so much willpower, I tried so hard, and I failed over and over and over again with so many good approaches. But because I'm a food addict, I wasn't able to do. So I found FA when I was 20. I was 200 pounds, well, maybe 198, but those pounds matter, those numbers matter when you're a food addict. And I was in college, and I was utterly hopeless because I had tried everything that money could buy. And I just, as I said, got bigger and more depressed and demoralized. And I had a lot of self-hate, because when you try over and over and over again to do something, and you tell all your friends, I'm doing this, I'm doing diet, I'm doing this thing, and you fail, and then you run away when you see that person coming that you told you were doing this thing, that builds up over the years, makes you feel really like your word doesn't matter at all. So I came here, and I was really broken. I was really hopeless. And I was given a free program where they gave me simple tools, especially a sponsor who I call every day. I still talk to my sponsor. It's been almost 35 years. And I don't call her as often as I used to in the beginning, of course, but you talked about support, and that I think is the most important thing of all, because the world is a lonely place when you have World War III between your ears. That's what I had. And so there's all these people all over the world that I can call anytime, that genuinely care about me, and they don't take any money from me. It's just a support, because everybody who comes here is grateful. So I lost 80 pounds when I was 20. I've had 2 children, special needs kids, long-term marriage, changed careers, lots of stuff. And I haven't gained back a single ounce, except for my pregnancies. But I don't hurt myself with food anymore. And I really have a lot of peace around food. Life keeps going. It's not easy. I don't think I'm going to be perfect anytime soon. But when it comes to food, I have been given neutrality, where before I had obsession. And so I'm just really grateful to be here today and share a little bit about this story. If anyone is interested in finding out more, you can go to our website, which we'll give at the end, but it's foodaddicts.org. And as I said, it's a free program, tons of help. And we're just really happy to be here and share our stories with you today.
And Susan, just to get a little bit more personal, and so that people have an idea of how this works. Like you said, you joined Food Addicts when you were 20. And what was the hardest thing for you at that point? You obviously have gained all this weight, you're struggling with your weight, and now you're joining a new program. It's never easy. It's not like you enter something and it just, it fits like a glove. So what was the hardest thing for you? Because obviously you overcame that, whatever it was.
The hardest thing for me was admitting that I couldn't do it on my own, and admitting that I had an addiction. Addiction, I think of like drug addicts and alcoholics, and honestly, I'm like an over perfect girl from Chevy Chase, Maryland, and that was not, like that. I didn't think of myself as someone who was powerless. I thought I had good willpower. I did, but because I'm a food addict, it didn't apply to food. So I had to admit that to myself. Once I admitted that I needed help, the help was there in FA. It was just that, and then of course putting down the food and going through withdrawal from sugar and flour, because they really are drugs in my system. And when I put those down, you put the food down and the feelings come up. So then I needed a lot of help and a lot of support. And my sponsor was there for me, the meetings, we go to meetings, people were there for me night and day. So yeah, I think if you are at that point where you feel like you can't do it on your own, then what do you have to lose? The program's free. You come check it out.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Susan. Colette, let's move to you. And let me also ask you, are all of you sponsors? Because I'm interested in learning more about this sponsorship that you're talking about. But Colette, let's us hear from you and your story. You're muted.
Yeah, hello everyone.
Hi.
Yeah, I joined the FA about a year ago, a little bit over a year ago. And I would say that when I joined, I knew that I had a problem with food, but I was very reluctant to call myself a food addict. So I had a problem with the name, food addiction. Mm-hmm. And I knew though that I had my relationship with food was not very good. It was actually very bad. There was something wrong because I remember, I'll give you an example. I would cook my meals, and while cooking my meal, I thought I felt hungry. And so I would pick up like a handful of potato chips and I'd eat it while I'm cooking. Then I'll go back for a second. And it wasn't because I was hungry. It was because I felt that I needed to eat something, put something in. So food, I associate food with comfort, much like what was addressed earlier. But still, I was reluctant to call myself a food addict. And it took me a very, very long time to accept that type of assignment to myself, that I was a food addict. But when I found out about the program, the same day I found out, the details about the program, I joined because I realized when I became hopeful that my life could be changed. When I heard that I could lose X amount of weight, and I didn't want to hear anything else. I just knew my focus at that time was to lose the weight that I had, and I lost 60 pounds altogether in the program. Came in at 6 feet tall. I came in at 217 pounds, and now I weigh my weight fluctuates between 159 and 160. And I know that I could never have accomplished that on my own. With all the things that I've done, I've tried a juice fast. That's how my way of addressing my weight problem was in the past, was to go on a juice fast, and then I would lose about 10, 15 pounds, but I would gain it back in about 3 months after I started. As soon as I got off the diet, I started my habits. I went back to older habits because I didn't have a plan, whereas in this program, it's so simple. I write my food out the night before, and that's what I stick to. I prepare my food the night before, and I take it with me to work. And it's a very simple plan. It's very simple. It's not like I'm doing a whole week's worth of planning, which is what I thought I had to do before. It's very simple. I just plan my food the night before, and that's what I take. And that's what I eat. And I lost 60 pounds. And I'll be forever grateful for this, for the program. I have accepted the fact that I am a food addict.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Thank you, Colette. Are you a sponsor as well?
I am not a sponsor yet.
Okay.
But I plan to do that sometime in the future.
Okay, thank you. Catherine, you're next.
Hi. My story with the food is that it came later in my life when I turned 60, and I was into the food addiction for 5 years with my doctor, kind of very concerned about my weight gain. And I was so drugged from the sugar and flour, I can't honestly say that I was cognizant of how much weight I was gaining. And it kind of came, I guess, about 4.5 years into me going to him every 6 months, and he telling me, I'm concerned about your weight, your joints are going to start hurting you. Like, I'm concerned I'm going to get diabetes because I am eating a tremendous amount of sugar and flour, and I cannot stop. And every bit of discipline I put on it not to do it, it didn't work, you know, and I didn't know where else to go. And so I went into denial about the whole thing. And so I was constantly going into like trying to be disciplined, going into denial. And then one day I went food shopping, and my cart had nothing but sugar and flour products in it. It was overflowing with sugar and flour products. And I said to myself, there is something seriously wrong with you. You came here to go food shopping for the week. So I shortly thereafter, I went to my doctor and I said, I think I figured out what's wrong with me. And he goes, what's wrong with you? And I said, I cannot stop eating sugar and flour. And he said, well, they have programs for people like you. We should go online and get yourself a sponsor. And at the time, I didn't really know what he was talking about, but I went online, I found Food Addicts in Recovery Anonymous, and I went to the meeting and I got myself a sponsor. And, you know, within a short period of time, when I started to understand in reading like about food, reading about addiction, I started to realize that I was an addict, you know, and I was berating myself for the fact that I wasn't self-disciplined enough. My discipline, I had no self-discipline around the food, and I really despised myself because of that. I thought that was really bad. But when I really understood that it had nothing to do with discipline, you know, like I put sugar and flour in me, and somehow or another on a cellular level in my body, it craves that stuff, and I can't get enough of it in my body. Once I kind of understood that, and owned the fact that I was an addict, it was easier for me to own the fact that I was an addict than it was for me to say that I wasn't disciplined enough. And I willingly kind of did the program, like whatever the tools that they laid out for me and they suggested to me, I was willing to do it because I had a tremendous fear in me that I was going to get diabetes. And I had no clue really what this program really had to offer to me. I simply wanted to stop eating sugar and flour, and you know, I won't get diabetes and everything will be fine. And I was amazed out of a short period of time of being in the program. I was in the program for about 3 days, and the voice that was in my head that was berating me for like eating the sugar and flour, you said you weren't going to eat it and you ate it and then you went and got more of it. Like that voice is never ending. And that voice disappeared after a very short period of time of being like within the first week of being in the program. I was saying to myself, I thought I've been trying to shut that voice up for like 5 years. And so that to me was a miracle. It was also a miracle to me that I wasn't going out to the bakery to get my sugar and flour fix. Like that was another miracle. Like I was shocked how easily it worked if I just did the tools that they suggested that I did. And you know, I basically lost 80 pounds, and I've been in the program for 7 years. And I'm just amazed at basically the fact that I did, and my addiction prior to going into the food was work. I was a workaholic my whole entire life. It's when my work hours changed that it flipped into the food. And so I just own the fact that I am an addict, and I respect the fact that it's a powerful disease. And, you know, earlier in my life, like prior to my food, sugar and flour getting out of hand, like sometimes like I would like gain like 10 pounds, and like I would go on some type of diet to kind of lose that 10 or 15 pounds to get into a dress that I wanted to get into, to go to some party I was going to, you know. But I mean, for the most part, I didn't have a weight issue, you know, because really my addiction was in work. I was constantly working. And but once that work stopped, the addiction went into the food. And my addiction, I never overate anything healthy. It was pure sugar and flour that I was overeating. And I'm grateful for the fact that my doctor had recommended that I go online and get a sponsor. And I'm grateful for the fact that I can identify with the fact that I am an addict. And I'm grateful that there is a program that exists that laid out a bunch of tools that actually have worked for over, I don't know, 25 years or whenever the program started. And so I can just honestly say that I'm a grateful person today. That they have a solution for a disease that I have, which is called addiction. So I thank you very much for giving me an opportunity to tell my story.
The opposite. Thank you for sharing an amazing, I don't even know how to call it. It's like you're a winner. I mean, all of you are winners. So thank you for sharing, because we know that it's not easy. So Mary, would you tell us a little bit about you?
Yes, hi. Yeah, as was previously shared, probably one of the hardest things coming into program was identifying with being an addict. I would sit at meetings and listen to people speak about their addiction and being an addict. And I was like in a mindset of, hey, I was willing to admit, I overate, and I was overweight. But an addict, that's a little much, I'll just, but meanwhile, the program was working for me. I was following the disciplines, doing what I should, and I was losing a good amount of weight. And, so that just kind of got my attention, and it kept me there for a while. But in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, I'll just get to goal and then I'll be on my way. I'll take it from here. And, little by little, I just kept listening, and I realized, the more I learned and the more I listened, wait a minute, people would identify certain behaviors that clearly are addictive, and I certainly had them. So, it just kind of started getting into my head, you're an addict, you definitely are. You don't have to be in the gutter, to be an addict. You certainly are. One thing that was clear to me as I came into program, I always fought weight, even as an adolescent, and had gone to Weight Watchers for, many, many times, from like age 15 till I came in at about 47, I think I was. And, I could get to within pounds of goal and say, all right, I'll take it from here. And then just, never get to goal, never do the maintenance plan. And then I would go back each time and say, this time I'm getting a goal, this time I'm getting the maintenance. And, and half the time I would just, half do the program and half not. And, there was just always some reason to cheat or have a little something, say I wasn't going to, but just go directly to the store and get it, or it's in the cabinets, whatever I had on hand. There was always some reason, there was something that you only have once a year, this, ethnic treat or holiday, something associated with the holiday. But I had like 365 of those things, reasons to have treats. And, it was just crazy. And then next thing I know, there's a saying, you diet your way into obesity. And that's what happened to me. The next thing, I'm 47, I weigh 200 pounds, and my health is starting to be affected. And my blood pressure has been elevated, my cholesterol is high, and my blood sugar was elevated. I did become a diabetic very early in the game, but I go to the doctor, and, he writes out 3 scripts and says, all right, come back in a month, we'll see how you do. And I'm like, wait a minute, isn't diet the cornerstone of treatment of all of these problems? And then, I leave the office. He's like, well, why don't you take the medicines? And if you lose the weight, we'll talk, kind of show me some results, and then we'll talk. And I realized as I walked out of the office is like, you have been dieting. What I thought was dieting, which clearly wasn't. So, this was just a whole nother approach, taking this problem out of my hands, putting it in God's hands, or higher powers, whatever you speak, just to, for me, it was, just getting direction from my sponsor and doing what I was told, the tools that are we speak of, and it just started working. And that's all I needed to know. I was just happy that it was working. And, the healing came as a result of that. I wasn't really very in touch with my emotions. Emotional eating, yes, I'm sure I did it. Happy, sad, elated, depressed, any and all emotions I ate. And I never ate bulimic amounts. I was kind of a grazer, more of a eat all day long. I think that's been kind of outlined. And that was my pattern. Just the 3 weighed and measured meals. I don't think about food any longer. I focus on life. My put down the food, my emotions did start welling up, and I had to learn what they were, how to deal with them. There was a lot of healing that had to go on, and it has over the years, and it's been 17 years going on 18, and I'm just grateful. I'm just grateful that I'm not in that headset, that self-loathing, that anger at myself, that there's serenity in my life. And when there isn't, I don't turn to food over it. Susan spoke of the neutrality that comes with this program. And it truly does. I mean, I've had people say to me, I'd rather lose my right arm than do what you do. But I don't feel as though I've really given up anything at this point. There's other food out there. It's not food I eat, and I'm okay. I like the food I eat. So that's it. Again, it's all about gratitude too. And I'm just happy to be where I am. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mary. And Susan, I'm going to go back to you because I'm really curious about those sponsors. So what's the role of the sponsor?
So a sponsor is someone who has been in the program at least 6 months. So they kind of have some recovery already and they know what they're doing. And your sponsor will give you support on a daily basis. You talk to your sponsor every day. That's the person who will help you with your food to get to that point of neutrality that Mary mentioned. They're kind of like, it's not like above or below. It's not a hierarchy. It's more just someone who's walked on the path a little bit ahead of you, and they kind of bring you along with them. But it's an enormous support. You get to know your sponsor very well. Again, there's no money involved. One of our traditions is that this is never professionalized, no money, but a sponsor becomes a friend who really can share what they do with you so that you can have those same good results. And I'm a sponsor. I know Catherine is a sponsor, Mary is a sponsor, and we can also set people up with a sponsor, but a sponsor, and you can change sponsors. So if you get one sponsor, you don't feel good, you move on. There's plenty of sponsors in the program.
I have time.
Is a sponsor someone that supports you on your way, but also like a shoulder to cry on, something like that?
Yes, I think I called my sponsor about 10 times a day in the beginning. In fact, there was a joke. Her husband I knew they ate their dinner at 5 o'clock every day. They were older. My sponsor was older. So at 4:45 every day, I would call for another call because I knew they would be there. And her husband would say, oh, there's Susan, because I was very emotional. Like Deanna said, this is a lot about our emotions. We eat a lot of emotions. So I needed that support, and the sponsor is absolutely there. And they also will tell you things that you might not want to hear, about things that you're doing that aren't supporting you, and you can get that feedback, and then you can sort of work out what you might want to do differently. So it's an ongoing, wonderful relationship.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're actually going to finish today with a video that Susan would like to share with us. So before we move on to the video, I just want to thank all of you for being with us today and, sharing all these stories. If there is something I'm getting away from this, is that definitely as women, we need to acknowledge our feelings, let them out a little. So I feel like I just want to go out and scream now. That would be the thing to do instead of asking for chocolate. But definitely, I'm amazed by all of you, Diana, because I know that you help so many people and you're amazing at what you do. And then all of your stories are so inspirational to others, because then we can feel that we can't do this. And, chocolate is not the option. I'm just saying chocolate because it's my to-go food that's why. But you know, it could be anything. Potato chips, one of you mentioned, I love them too. So thank you so much, and hopefully I'll get to see you again. And please, Susan, you're ready to share your screen, and that'll be all for today. Thank you so much to all of our attendees. Just hang out here, hang on while we watch this video together. Thank you.
I'm remembering before coming into program, you know, swearing off of food sometimes, meaning it, and being baffled that, you know, here I am reaching to open the refrigerator door again.
I would binge, just eat very large quantities of food until I was stuffed, and then I would purge my food.
I became the big guy. I would be out with friends, and it was almost like a shield that I would wear out of fear. So no matter what weight I was, I realized the problem was in my brain.
And an addiction is a condition of the brain in which someone has a compulsion or a behavior, and that behavior is something that they can't control.
So my brain was always used to revolving around my drug, and I had to completely rewire, and I didn't know how to do that.
But uniquely about an addiction is that it creates a bad outcome, some detriment to the person.
I couldn't have personal relationships because I couldn't connect with people. And no matter what weight I was, I hated myself. I hated the way I felt in my own body.
And so addiction defined in that way is something that you can very easily ascribe to food.
I realized I was an addict when I couldn't stop on my own. The volume of food. When I couldn't control that, I knew there was something wrong.
I knew I was a food addict after I came into the rooms, and I listened to other people talk about what it was like for them. I realized that's exactly what it was like for me.
Some people believe that education is all that's required to manage food addiction, but it's not as simple as that, because so many patients that I see don't struggle from needing to know what to do. It's doing what they already know.
Just telling someone not to eat does not work. Helping people understand maybe why they're eating and having those tools to learn about themselves. And that's what this program has done for me.
It was really difficult in the beginning to give up sugar and flour. But once I got through the initial detox, that's when the recovery process really started.
FA defines abstinence as weighted measured meals with nothing in between, no flour, no sugar, and the avoidance of binge foods.
FA has adapted the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous into their program and allows you to work those steps with a sponsor, someone who's been through what you've been through, who understands what you're dealing with.
When I came to the program, I got a sponsor, and I've had that sponsor for 12 and a half years.
So many times I see people who try to fix this problem by themselves. They try to just double down on exercising more or eating less, but you're doing it all by yourself. And so it's very, very, very hard to be successful. What I like so much about FA is that you don't have to do it by yourself.
My very first FA meeting, I was terrified, first of all, they were going to weigh me. And of course, none of that happened. Nobody cared how much I weighed. They were just glad I was there. And I was like, oh, this is not like what I'm used to. In FA, I've always felt like I belonged from the time I was a newcomer until now, years later in recovery. And I don't have to try to do life alone anymore.
The problem with obesity is all of the other health problems that it causes. It's associated with hypertension, type 2 diabetes, obstructive sleep apnea, hypercholesterolemia, and the list goes on and on and on. It is a major problem in our country.
My comorbid condition started to show My cholesterol was over 200. My triglycerides were over 300. My blood pressure was borderline in the 130s over high 80s, 140s over high 80s, knowing as a registered nurse they weren't going to go away on their own with the weight that I was carrying around, and I knew that.
People who suffer from obesity and lose weight as a result of it can reverse all of those health ailments. They can see improvement in their high blood pressure, in their blood sugar, and also add years back to their life.
I was about 280 when I came in. I maintained about a 215-pound weight now, and I've maintained that for about 7 years.
I was weighing 218 pounds, and now I am down to 175 pounds, and I have maintained my weight loss for 12 and a half years.
At my highest weight, I was 210 pounds, and I've lost over 80 pounds, so I'm usually weighing in between 127 and 130, and I've maintained that weight loss for over 20 years.
My highest weight was 246 pounds at 5'5" and a half. My current weight is 135 pounds, and I've maintained that for over 18 years.
Not only can they see improvement in the health, but they can also see improvement in the quality of their life. They can have a fuller, richer life.
Being an FA has dramatically changed my relationship with food. I don't obsess about food anymore. I don't crave certain things. I know that I eat enough because I weigh and measure everything.
I came in just to stop binging and purging, but I didn't know that it would be possible for me to also lose the obsession and the compulsion around the food.
The program of Food Addicts in Recovery has given me more power than I could have ever imagined. And I mean power in how I live my life because I'm free from the food.
I think that healthcare professionals should strongly consider referring their patients to FA. In FA, patients can go and have a weekly meeting, a sponsor whom they can communicate with every single day.
If conversation arises around food and weight and someone seems to be struggling, in my story with them, all they have to do, if they want, is to check it out and decide for themselves if it's something that can work for them.
What I do is tell them, there's a group in town that's an international organization that has chapters all over this city. And I'm going to give you a brochure and I encourage you to go. You have nothing to lose. It's totally free. And they're going to give you tactics and techniques to retrain your mind on how to think about food.
This program saved my life. The freedom I have, the fullness, the abundance I experience in life every day because I'm actually living now. So I'm extremely grateful for FA giving me a life that's second to none.